Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can provide an update on the Amy Cooper case. She's also known as the Central Park Karen. She was recently charged with falsely reporting an incident in the third degree. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So I'm going to go through a quick review of the timeline, just the basic facts, and then provide an analysis on the updated information that we now have about Amy Cooper being charged with a crime. So the compressed timeline, May 25, 2020, Central Park in Manhattan, New York City, 41-year-old Amy Cooper, who is white, has a brief encounter with a 57-year-old African-American man named Christian Cooper. They are not related to one another. Amy has her dog with her, but it's not on a leash, even though that's required in that area of Central Park. Christian advises Amy that leashes are required there, but she refuses to cooperate. Christian tells Amy, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. He starts recording her with his phone, and evidently he reached into his pocket to retrieve dog treats. He used these treats to motivate owners like her to put their dogs on leashes, because if they didn't, the dog, of course, would run over to him. Amy Cooper, who is aggravated by this, closes the distance between them. Christian asks her not to come close to him. Amy advises Christian that she's going to call the police and tell them there's an African-American man threatening her. A few seconds later, she follows through on this threat in a dramatic fashion. The police arrived, but both parties had left the scene by the time they got there. A video that Christian recorded got released. Amy Cooper was identified, and her employer, Franklin Templeton, fired her. Now, when I did my first video about this case, I noted that the police didn't seem interested in charging Amy Cooper, which disappointed me because it really seemed clear that a crime did occur. Apparently, they have reconsidered because she was charged with falsely reporting an incident in the third degree. This is a Class A misdemeanor. The maximum penalty is 1 year in prison and a $1,000 fine. In the state of New York, this charge can actually be supported in several different ways. One of these ways would be if a person gratuitously reported to a law enforcement officer or agency the alleged occurrence of an offense or incident which did not, in fact, occur. So this seems pretty clear. That does appear to be what happened in this situation. So there are two questions to look at here. Will she be convicted? And a related question, how will the personality of someone like this factor into the prosecution? So how might somebody in her position react, kind of based on what we saw from prior behavior? Now, I don't think her guilt is really in dispute, unless there's something incredible about this case that I don't know, like it was all staged or something like that. So I'll look at the factors for and against her being convicted of this offense and receiving a significant penalty. So evidence in favor of this: she committed a serious crime, bringing law enforcement into a situation when unnecessary. Her crime may have been racially motivated, although that's beyond the scope of the charge she is facing right now. She left the scene instead of accepting responsibility, like she didn't wait for the police to arrive and just tell them what she did. Looking at factors working in favor of her having the charge dismissed or some other favorable outcome to her, we see this is likely her first offense. I'm not aware of any criminal record, although I don't think anything has been reported at all. She has apologized in the situation, so we see some degree of remorse. Technically, even though Christian Cooper was within his rights, he did initiate the contact. I don't consider this significant because, again, he had every right to do it and he wasn't really aggressive, but I can appreciate how a judge might feel differently. Some people have suggested that both of these individuals were busybodies, meaning they both potentially qualify as Karens. Christian not only accepted Amy's apology, but he has stated he will not cooperate with authorities. He feels that Amy has been punished enough. I think this is actually fairly powerful. If a victim is saying, don't prosecute a perpetrator, especially for a crime that is not a felony, I could see a district attorney or a judge throwing this case out altogether. The last item in her favor, she did suffer ramifications. So you have the public humiliation, the loss of the job. Judges do consider this, even though many people believe they should not. Many people believe that the penalties under the law should apply regardless of what somebody faced outside the law. So moving to the next question, how will the personality of a Karen factor in? Will it help her? how will it affect her decision to take this to trial or to plead guilty? Normally, I would think someone who did something like this would lie at this stage. She was lying when she called the police, after all. So she might say that she didn't do it and plead not guilty, but of course we see the video. So I think contrition in the form of a guilty plea does seem like the only way out for her. Another thing to consider, if there is narcissism in this instance, the remorse can end suddenly. So a lot of the time with narcissists, when they're in trouble, they'll say that they're sorry, they want to make it up, they would have never done it, they don't know what they were thinking. But then when there are consequences they really can't endure, or don't believe they can endure, all of a sudden they change their story. I was just saying sorry to be polite, I really didn't do anything wrong. The other person was provoking the situation, so we could see a defense in that form as well. The last question here, what would be fair in this case? What's a just outcome considering what this person did? Well, as I mentioned, according to Christian Cooper, Amy Cooper should not be convicted. Because this is his position, then I would say he gets to decide as the victim. Often, in much more serious cases, the state takes over, regardless of whether witnesses cooperate or not, but not usually with a misdemeanor. If Christian did not forgive Amy, I would say, taking everything into account, 40 hours community service would be fair, an apology, but I would not go with a fine or jail time. Now, I've heard people talking about 60 hours or 80 hours being more reasonable, something like that, and some people even talking about jail, but I think that's going to be really tough to get. Again, no priors, and she's remorseful. That seems a little bit punitive. If she targeted Christian out of the clear blue, then yes, I'd be okay with jail. But again, he did provoke the situation, even though he was within his rights. What I find so interesting about this case, especially now that it's moved to the criminal level, is the ramification that it has for people who are narcissistic. Now, I don't know if Amy Cooper is or is not narcissistic. I don't know anything about her. But talking about narcissists in general, we see that their position seems to be changing a little bit, like what they can get away with has changed. It used to be that a narcissist could be offensive to people fairly regularly, and if somebody complained, it was just the narcissist word against the victim's word, and that was the end of it. So without some sort of other evidence, like a video recording, nothing happened. But now narcissists are getting caught in narcissistic behavior, and we see this all the time. There are many videos out there with people really acting arrogant and condescending. They show a sense of entitlement. We see clear activities like deception being captured. So it seems like for a narcissist, the party is over, right? It's going to be much harder for them to get away with some behaviors. Unfortunately, for people who are victimized by narcissists, many of the bad behaviors occur in private, right? This one happened to be in public, if again, this was something that involves narcissism. But most are done privately. We see a lot of false accusations and work behind the scenes that narcissists get away with pretty regularly. So cameras aren't going to be moving that pervasively into society where people are going to be recorded when they're alone. So narcissists will always have a way to harm people. I do think at least this does limit the public narcissistic behavior, at least that would rise to a criminal level. So I see video recording as a positive thing, although a little bit worrisome in the sense of now everybody has to be mindful of that all the time. I think the other thing that's really changed here that this case brings out is this idea that when somebody does do something in public, even if they don't see somebody recording them, they have to assume they're being recorded. So as people go places now, they just have to assume there are several cameras on them at any time. So I think this has caused people to be more aware of their own behavior, more cognizant that whatever they do, it might be seen by others. So will this end narcissism, at least in these public arenas? Well, it might limit visible narcissism, but narcissists will still be narcissistic, regardless of whether they can get away with a certain type of offense in public, right? So this won't actually change anything in terms of personality, but it will protect some people from having to deal with narcissistic behavior in public. So those are my thoughts on the update we see in the Amy Cooper case. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.